Oh, down here. Did that- Oops, that didn't slide very well.
Got the fresh Halloween stuff.
For last year.
Yeah.
Although it's already on sale, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's been out since August.
All right, we're gonna get started. Please call them. All right, I'm gonna call the roll. Mari Davis,
Here.
Nan Dreyer,
Here.
Robert Pesca.
Here.
Andrew Fackler,
Here.
Alex Foster. Here. Ray Henley,
Here.
Jerry Laporte,
Here.
Joan Lawrence.
Here.
Becca Meyer. Here. Katie Myers.
Here.
Mark Turnbull,
Here.
Andy Winchell,
Here.
and Dick Woodman.
Here. Thank you.
Okay, welcome to the October 15th, 2025 Historical Affairs. Effective July 1st, 2024, updated state legislation continues to affect the county board of commissions, including the HLRB, to have an in-person quorum to conduct its monthly. HLRB hearings are provided in a hybrid environment, both in person and streamed online. Members of the public may attend and participate either virtually or in person. For members of the board joining us virtually this evening, please join us via the Microsoft Teams link. Please keep your device muted until you'd like to speak, but ensure your video is turned on and you are visible. For members of the public joining us, today's meeting from the county website via the Microsoft. There is also a dial-in phone option for those who wish. Please keep it muted and mute it off. For public speakers who have pre-registered, please wait until you're called on to speak. For those who have not pre-registered, requests for public speaking can still be submitted. Staff will do their best to accommodate those requests. However, we cannot guarantee. Speaker slips are available in the front of the room for people who have not pre-registered. Public comment is only allowed for items advertised on the HLRB's agenda. The ability to decline to speak will no longer be available after the HLRB chair stated that public comments are verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. The meeting chat should not be used for discussion, comments, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. We may use the chat for technical assistance. All voting will be done by a call of the roll. Lastly, this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website, the county's commission meeting YouTube feed. Sharing any personal information that you would not like to be made public. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act requirements. Okay. Approve the September 2025 minutes. Does anyone have any questions on those? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the September minutes.
Second.
Mr. Tanya, to approve the September minutes. Nathan Burlingame,
Abstain.
Mari Davis,
Yes.
Nan Dreyer,
Yes.
Robert Pesca,
Hey.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster. Yes. Ray Henley,
Yes.
Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Rebecca Meyer. Yes. Katie Myers,
Yes.
Mark Turnbull,
Yes.
Andrew Winchell,
Yes.
Dick Woodruff.
Stay.
Motion carries. Okay, next we have the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions about any of the items on the consent? Okay, I move that the HLRB approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
Call the roll. Please respond. Yep. Please respond yes if you support the motion. Nathan Burlingame,
Yes.
Mari Davis,
Yes.
Nan Dreyer,
Yes.
Robert Pesca,
Yes.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster,
Yes.
Ray Henley,
Yes.
Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Rebecca Meyer,
Yes.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Mark Turnbull,
Yes.
Andrew Winchell,
Yes.
Dick Wilson.
Yes.
Grace?
And if you are in attendance for those consent agenda items, those were approved and staff will follow up with their approval paperwork. Thank you. Administrative COAs are administrative leads.
Madam Chair, can I make a 20-second comment about the administrative agenda?
Oh, sure.
Okay, regarding the tree in number one,
Uh-huh.
it's one of the largest remaining white oaks in Maywood. I went and looked at it today, and despite what the forester said, it's a pretty healthy tree. He even said it was a healthy tree. And I think that we created a big loophole when we did the addendum to the Maywood guidelines that allowed trees to be taken down by administrative COA. That's all. That's it. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Dick. All right.
Maybe the staff could explain why they approved this COA. I
Because the forester said that the tree could come down.
mean, do they have a reason for taking it down other than that they want to, just because it's diseased? Is that-
Yeah, the forester said that there was signs of disease in the tree. So we go off of what the forester says as a recommendation. If they don't recommend that it come down, then it can come forward to the HALRB for review. That's within, it's in the Maywood design guidelines.
So you had no choice.
Well, it's, if the forester is the tree expert and they're saying that the tree is a candidate for removal, then I'm gonna go off of what their recommendation is.
So if it seems like, because I'm trying, just I'm piling on with what Dick was saying, is that in a case like this where, concerned neighbors, or anybody in the county, since it's in a historic district, is concerned about the tree, is there a process by which somebody could ask for an independent review? Because we're allowing one person, the arborist, to say it needs to go, and that's it. There's no appeals process. There's no ability for anybody to intervene and say, we disagree. Our arborist has looked at this tree and says it's healthy. Is there a process by which that can happen?
Not at the moment, but I think that there will be a bit of a conflict with, if a tree is on private property, having another person who doesn't own the property to have an arborist come look at
But
it.
it's historic district. It's not, that would be similar to if somebody wanted to do something to their house and a neighbor noticed that they were doing it, they could call you up and say, why are they doing this to their house? I mean, it's
Sure,
the
something-
nature of being in a historic district.
Sure, but I think what you were saying, that they would hire an arborist to come and look at the tree to have a more independent report. I think that that's the point that I was trying to make, is that that would involve doing something a bit more than calling us.
Well,
to talk
they
about it.
presumably they wouldn't be allowed to, go on the property, but.
I think the thing to know is there is no appeal to Harvey House.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, the staff are bound by the guideline, which we
No, I know.
which we approved, a few years ago.
Right,
So
I'm just asking the question.
The
It
guidelines.
seems like there are cases where, you're basically, it's the kind of thing, if you've dealt with arborists, which I have over a long period of time, they disagree. Some of them say, the tree should come down. Some will say, oh, no, it's got another 15 years. It's not something that's real cut and dry.
Yeah.
So I'm just asking if there's a process, that's all.
For the record, what he said was that the canopy was healthy, but it showed evidence of fungus around the base and possible evidence of boring insects. But it's a pretty big, healthy tree.
I was going to jump in. So I think this is an interesting issue. So if we want to talk about trees in like historic districts, I think maybe we it's the agenda of meetings. I think we've definitely had issues. Trees have been in front of historic properties before the issues as well, and I don't have a ton of background on that. So let me know to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to move us along.
I
I think it would be interesting to include it. I'm not sure what jurisdiction we have over these issues,
Right, I think that would be part of our discussion.
but it is a huge issue now in the Lion Park and Lion Village neighborhoods.
I know there's a tree at issue in Lion Park that people are very upset about, and, you know, I don't know if we have the purview, so that's what I'm saying, if we want to, you know, talk about that, let's
Well,
do
we
it.
used to, in the historic districts, we used to have more authority before we changed the guideline. I think we should make-
So maybe shoot me an email if that's, you know, something you want to get into. All right. Okay, let's move on to the local historic district nomination for Happiness. This is the secondary hearing for Happiness at 4120 41st Street, Gilbert. Yeah.
All right, so I'm really excited to be presenting on the secondary hearing for Happiness, which is located at 4120 41st Street North. The property is in the Arlington neighborhood, and it was nominated by the property owner, Mr. Pierre Coussard, who has joined us this evening. And I've been working with Mr. Coussard on this entire process, so I would just like to take the opportunity to thank you for your collaboration and for your stewardship of a historic resource in Arlington. I'd also like to thank Andrew very briefly for his review of the architectural description for this one. It's a bit more complicated than some of our other ones, so I really appreciated having your expert eyes on it as an architectural historian, so thank you. So tonight I'm going to start with staff's presentation, and then after that, Mr. Coussard will have a moment to share any thoughts he would like to with you all. We do not have any public speakers signed up, so then after that, the matter will be forward. So to start us off, I thought that I would provide a brief reminder of the project's timeline. So this application was submitted by the property owner in March of 2023. The HALRB's preliminary hearing occurred in June of that same year. At that hearing, the HALRB unanimously voted to have the project added to staff's study queue. Staff completed their study of the property, which included all the research, the architectural survey, and the writing of both the report and the design guidelines from April to September of this year. The report and the design guidelines were shared with and reviewed by the property owner prior to their finalization for tonight's meeting. Tonight, as I mentioned, is the secondary hearing, and it's at this hearing tonight that the HALRB will make a recommendation as to whether or not this property should become a local historic district. So the map on the screen, it shows the boundaries, which would only encompass the property at 4120 41st Street North. And the next couple of slides are going to be a bit about the history and the property's timeline. So during the Civil War, the property on which Happiness was eventually constructed had two separate owners. It was initially owned by Annie Fry. Much of her property was seized by the U.S. Army for the construction of Fort Ethan Allen. She sold about 188 acres to her neighbor, Gilbert Vanderwerken, in 1862. Gilbert Vanderwerken, who was originally from New York, owned over 1,000 acres of land in Arlington. His primary business was that of operating an omnibus line in Washington, D.C. Omnibuses, for those of us who may not know what that is, it's the early version of buses as we know it today. His Vanderwerken line, company line, ran from Georgetown to Navy Yard, and a one-way fare cost 12 cents, which is, nothing costs 12 cents anymore, so. Mr. Vanderwerken, who lived in Georgetown with his family, purchased property in Arlington to use as pasture land for the horses that he used for his omnibus business. In 1852, he built his summer home in Arlington. It was called Falls Grove, and it's located about a mile away from where Happiness is located today. In addition to his various business ventures and public transportation, he also owned and operated a stone quarry along the Potomac River in Arlington near Chain Bridge, and that's near where Happiness was eventually built. That company was in operation until 1938. So no evidence was found to suggest that Mr. Vanderwerken developed the land on which Happiness was built. Upon his death, he left 125 acres of land to his daughter, Emma Jewell. The image on the screen shows portraits of both the Vanderwerkens. Gilbert is on the left, his wife Jane is on the right, and then their house, Falls Grove, is at the center. This is a map which is taken from Gilbert Vanderwerken's claim to the Southern Claims Commission after the Civil War. It shows the plot of land that Gilbert had purchased from Annie Fry. The red circle is about where Happy Nest was eventually built. The blue line is Chain Bridge, and then you can also see Fort Ethan Allen over here. All right. So Emma Vanderwerken married Thomas B. Jewell in 1883. Thomas Jewell was a lawyer. Records indicate that the land Emma obtained from her father was not developed during her lifetime, and she and her family resided primarily in Washington, D.C. Emma passed away in 1899, and upon her death, the land passed to her husband, Thomas Jewell, and you can see on the map there that he owned that entire parcel. The red star is about where Happy Nest is located today. He continued to live in DC, but he did remarry, and around 1920, they built a summer house. The house was located to the south of where Happy Nest was eventually built. Although mapping from the early 1920s does not show the house, we know that it was there because when the Jewells sold the property to the next owners, a newspaper article noted that the land also included a bungalow. The Jewells continued to live in DC and used the bungalow likely as their summer home, which was really common during the early 20th century here in Arlington. So then in 1922, the Jewells sold 3.45 acres and the bungalow to Lena and J. Grafton Poor. The Poors lived in the bungalow that the Jewells had built, and that was located at 4015 North Randolph Street. Again, this house was not an early iteration of Happy Nest because it was located to the south of where Happy Nest was eventually built. In 1929, the Poors sold 1.5 acres of the property to Crandall Mackey, but they retained the remaining portion of the land, which included the bungalow. Crandall Mackey was a prominent citizen of Arlington County during the early 20th century who worked as a lawyer and the Commonwealth attorney. He was also very invested in real estate. Evidence doesn't suggest that he developed the property, but he likely bought it as like a future investment opportunity. This is a plat from 1922, which shows the land that was sold by the Jewells to the Poors. There's no houses drawn on the plat, but that's not uncommon for this time period. The red circle is about where Happy Nest is located, but you can see that the primary access point to the property at that time was from Randolph Street. 41st Street had not been built yet. Okay. In 1932, Fannie Foy and David K. Ballard purchased the undeveloped 1.5 acre lot from Crandall Mackey, and it was under the Ballard's ownership that Happy Nest was built. Fannie Foy, who's on the screen, grew up in North Carolina and attended college at Flora McDonald College. She was a very social individual and was also known for having a very beautiful singing voice. 4 years after graduating from college, she married David Ballard, who was from Florida. At the time of their marriage, he worked in the real estate business. In the late 1920s, they resided primarily in Florida and North Carolina, but between 1932 and 1933, they relocated to Arlington after they bought the land near Chain Bridge from Crandall Mackey. So then in January of 1933, Fannie Foy submitted a building permit for the construction of their home, which they called Happy Nest. The name Happy Nest does not have a specific origin, or at least one that I could find, but it's likely the name is a combination of the word happy and the word nest, and they combined them to, allude to a happy home. According to the permit submitted, which a copy is up on the screen there, the Ballards were requesting the construction of a 2-story dwelling comprised of brick with 6 rooms and 1 bathroom. Vala Engineering Limited was the builder. No architect was listed. The description of the house on the permit and the plat that was submitted as part of this permit application matches the description of the northernmost portion of Happy Nest, which indicates that this is the oldest and original part of the house. The two frame outbuildings on the property were likely constructed around the same time, although neither are shown on early maps like Sanborn's, which often did note the location of secondary structures. By 1935, the Ballards were settled in Arlington at Happy Nest. Fanny and David had a son, Will, in that same year. David had also changed careers and worked as a postal clerk for the U.S. Post Office in D.C. Fanny managed the household and continued to explore her passion for singing. It was said that she used to sing to her guests from the balcony on the main room of the House of Happiness whenever they had guests. She would sing to them. In 1946, David Ballard actually passed away as a result of injuries he sustained from falling off the roof of Happy Nest while doing work on the exterior. Fanny never remarried and continued to live at Happy Nest and raise her son there. So it's a little small on the screen, but you can see Happy Nest here. It's outlined in the red. And then this house here is the bungalow that was built around the 1920s by the Jewels. And Mrs. Poor still lived in the house at the time. And this is the 1936 Sanborn map. The map notes that it was a tile brick faced dwelling with 1.5 stories of roof clad in either slate or metal and a frame attic. The frame attic is a reference to the second story of Happiness, which is clad in wood siding. As you can see, the brick rear addition had not been built yet. So then around 1960, Mrs. Ballard added a hyphen and rear addition to Happy Nest. The rear addition is visible on the 1962 aerial, which is very difficult to see on the screen, but you can, I promise it's there. You can see it kind of in this area. And then it appears again on the 1967 aerial. According to the current owner of Happy Nest, an older couple lived in the top floor of the rear addition during the Ballard's residency. The couple was a Black man and woman who had worked for Mrs. Ballard for several years, completing housekeeping, gardening, and other tasks around the property. Unfortunately, the names of both individuals are unknown at this time. The couple resided in the uppermost room of the addition, which was very small. It only had one room and then a closet and no bathroom. So the couple had to use a metal staircase to get down from the top and use the bathroom in the basement of Happy Nest, which apparently was not in the best of conditions. So no census data or other records suggest that other people aside from the Ballards resided at Happy Nest. However, it's not uncommon for written records to lack really essential information about domestic workers. There was also systemic underrepresentation of minorities in these records as well. So further research should be completed in the future to learn more about this couple who lived and worked at Happy Nest. In 1980, Fanny Ballard sold Happy Nest to the current owner, Pierre Cossard. She moved to an apartment complex in Buckingham and she passed away 7 years later. So as I mentioned earlier, the original and oldest portion of Happy Nest was constructed in 1933 by Valla Engineering for the Ballards. And then around 1960, Mrs. Ballard constructed a rear addition and connected it to the original 1933 portion of the house with a hyphen. Happy Nest is a uniquely styled Tudor Revival house. The Tudor Revival style was popular because of the variety of materials that can be used and the asymmetrical design, which allowed for greater versatility. This also allowed for additions to be easily included into the design in the future, as was done at Happy Nest. This flexibility was appealing to those building houses on unique terrains or those seeking to obtain the best views of nature. The use of natural materials with muted colors also allowed for the house to blend in with its natural setting. Happy Nest is unique in its styling and that the frame upper stories are clad in wood shingles in a step design, whereas most Tudor Revival style houses utilize a design with frame upper stories made of exposed timbers with stucco in between. The use of the shingles gives the house a more rustic quality. The foundation of Happy Nest is largely not visible, but it is parched in some areas. The structural system is brick and stone. The oldest portion, as I noted earlier, has the frame system up top. The rear addition and hyphen are brick and stone only. Roof system is clad in architectural asphalt shingles. Fenestration varies, but doors are mostly made of wood, and the most common window type is a metal French casement window. So now I'm going to scroll through some photographs of the property. So it is set up on a hill. This is the front elevation. And then this is the original 1933 portion of the house. This is the rear addition here. You can see the hyphen here in the middle. And then this is the rear elevation, and it's mostly just shows the rear addition. This is that room I was mentioning earlier where that couple resided. This is the side elevation and then another opening. So Happiness has several outdoor areas. There are 3 patios in total, 1 deck, and then an enclosed open area here with some pathways. At the corner of this area is a fountain feature, which may have tapped an original spring. It's no longer operational, but there is a pool underneath it. Then these are the sheds on the property. They've got the same siding as the original portion of the house. They're used for mechanical equipment today. And then these are some housing details. So we've got a picture of one of the doors. This is the typical window type that's used on the property. These are very interesting features. These are dovecotes. Dovecotes were, they can be freestanding or they can be attached to houses, but they were used to house pigeons or doves. People would use them as a food source, but they would also use feathers for things like stuffing pillows and things like that. It's possible that the Ballards used these as dovecotes, but it might also be more likely that they use them as a decorative element to kind of harken back to this revival style. Dovecotes are a very British feature in the landscape, and so Tudor revival is largely connected to that style of architecture. All right. So staff find that Happiness meets designation criteria B, E, G, and K as listed in the Arlington County zoning ordinance. We find that criterion B applies because the area around Chain Bridge in Arlington County has a unique and varied history, and it's within this regional development history that Happiness was constructed. Throughout much of the area's history, it was predominantly rural, but it also served as a strategic location that connected the county with other parts of Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. Happiness is valuable in that it is the earliest extant home built along 41st Street North and conveys the early 20th century development history of the area around Chain Bridge. Criterion E applies because Happiness is a great example of the Tudor revival style and represents one of the popular architectural styles of the early 20th century. A third of architected designed houses were Tudor revivals in Virginia between 1880 and 1940, so it's a very popular style in Virginia. Happiness' use of wood shingles as siding on the upper floors is a unique iteration of the style, which may have been chosen as a way to reflect the more rustic environment in which the house was built. Criterion G applies because the Tudor revival architectural elements of Happiness render it an important component of the built environment in Arlington. The mixed use of materials, muted tones, rough cut stone, which visually reminds people of the natural stone found throughout the area, which was quarried, asymmetrical design, and uniquely shaped wood shingles, and the inclusion of dovecotes are, to name a few elements, all combined to create an architecturally significant dwelling that conveys the architectural history of the area. And then finally, criterion K applies because Happiness is a high level of architectural integrity and has been well preserved throughout the years. The property's location, setting, design, materials, sense of workmanship, feeling, and association all remain either unchanged or largely intact. So as you all know, the purpose of design guidelines is to assist the current and future property owners, county staff, and the HALRB in the preservation and protection of the historic character and physical integrity of Happiness. We recognize that buildings are not static and continue to evolve over time. So the guidelines are intended to preserve the most important physical aspects of Happiness and ensure that any changes are respectful of and compatible with the existing fabric and architectural character of the district. The primary significant feature of the LHD will be the house itself. The circa 1960 patio, circa 1930 sheds, and the fountain feature will be considered historically significant. However, the circa 2020 patios, 1980 deck, and the driveway parking pad are not historically significant. The modifications to all will be subject to the design guidelines since changes could impact the site. Other significant features are the open setting and then the mature trees. modifications to the property site and landscape elements like walkways or the construction of outbuildings will be subject to the design guidelines as well. In total, there are 13 certificate of appropriateness standards that will require HALRB review. And then there are 9 administrative COA standards which will require staff review. Routine maintenance, repair, and replacement in kind are encouraged and do not need review. So staff recommend that the HALRB recommends that the Happiness LHD, finding that it meets at least 2 of the 11 designation criteria required to become an LHD, be approved, and that such recommendation for approval is sent to the county board for the board's consideration. Should the HALRB make such a finding this evening, then the LHD designation will be presented by staff to the Planning Commission and the County Board for their consideration, as is required by the zoning ordinance. The authority to create an LHD lies with the County Board, as you all know. Should the HALRB find that the property does not meet at least 2 of the 11 criteria and decides that it should not be designated, the LHD process for Happiness would end this evening, and it would not move on to the Planning Commission or the County Board. So that concludes staff's presentation for the item.
I think we're gonna let the property owner speak and then.
Oh.
Okay. Pierre, would you like to speak from there, or you can join us up here?
Whichever you like, guess I can be
Why don't you
seen.
come up to the table?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
You may not have to hear like on the speaker from there. Go to the very front, or you just want to come right here? Yeah.
Wherever you want.
I can shift here.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I congratulate you on the work that was done. It's incredible. I bought that house long ago before going to Europe, thinking it was a neat house and never actually lived in it. Had tenants in it all along. But I knew a lot of things about it, but the extent of research that you went to is absolutely fascinating. A couple of things you left out deliberately. It has had over the years a reputation of having had paranormal activity, which I've heard from so many tenants, not the kind of tenants that are touchy-feely type, but very, very down to earth. That, okay, fine. I've never seen it myself, but I thought the house was really interesting, and I think not enough things are being preserved. Unfortunately, and it didn't matter for me, but there's, I think, not enough incentive in Arlington to preserve historically significant things. You would probably not be surprised at the number of friends, family attorneys who said, Pierre, why in the world are you doing this? Where are the positives? Well, positives are that it'll be preserved. Yeah, but where are the other positives? Well, there aren't. What actually got me started on that is I have a delightful daughter-in-law who is, the inside is not preserved, I understand, but has some very delightful wood that Fanny Foy was brought up from Georgia. You know more about it than I do at this point. And my daughter-in-law said, oh, this place is beautiful inside. This wood is great. Wouldn't it be nice if I painted it white? Yeah, well, let me think about that. So that's what got me started on this process. I had that actually in mind a little bit before I bought the lot next to it, because I didn't want somebody building a monstrosity that would spoil it. So I bought the lot, had an architect and a builder push it into the side of the hill so it could not be seen. Then while I was in Switzerland, somebody bought a lot on the other side and built that same monstrosity, but so be it. Only thing I could encourage you to do is there any way, because I've had attorneys really give me a fair amount of negative feedback as to why I was doing this. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. And I can afford to do it, I guess. But if only there was some incentive, because there's a lot of houses, a lot of trees, as you guys were talking about, that really should be preserved. Not the topic tonight, but I have a a house that the mother bought many, many years ago, which is one of the old, not as interesting as this one, but very typical of the neighborhood at the time. That sits on a very large lot, which if it's left as is, will turn into, we'll comment on it, but one of the missing middle situations that could easily accommodate $3 million+ houses. Something needs to be done to preserve things that are worth preserving here. Any questions or any?
Questions for here?
Thank you for taking care of it, being such a good steward of it.
I never actually lived, I say I had tenants all along. One tenant lived there for 20 years. Because she liked it. But the house is worth taking care of it. When I fixed it up, when I came back to the States, I did it the way that I think, not because of that Fanny Foy, put copper gutters and really fix it up nicely. And I think it's wonderful that if you approve this, it will be preserved from people that have more of a financial immediate objective than I do.
Good for
Thank
you.
you so much.
It's worth going. Arlington's a nice place, and as you see it, I lived overseas for a long time, but I actually was born in France when I went to W&L High School, which at the time was called Washington League. And things were different, and things have changed in a positive way, and some things have changed in a negative way. So I think that it's very important that associations or groups such as this try to preserve as much as you can. But for most people, there needs to be a little bit of an incentive, which frankly, there's not. It didn't matter to me, but I'm fortunate to be in the position where it doesn't matter.
Thank you very much. Yeah, all right.
Oh, there was also said to have been a speakeasy. Did you find anything about that?
No, I did not.
Yeah, I remember.
A hidden place where the liquor was stored and a special access from the garage would slid into the back. Who knows?
But as the report said, no historical evidence.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any public speakers? Okay, so if we have no public speakers, the matter is before the board. And I know you had
Well,
questions.
it's not a question. I just wanted to commend staff.
Ah.
This was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
The research is.
I
I've had that house for a long, long time. 34 years. Never knew, and I tried to look into it. This was phenomenal.
Oh, thank you
Really?
very much.
Yes, amazing.
I also appreciated that staff ran down a lot of those rumors. It was pretty entertaining. Some of these reports are sometimes fairly dry. This one had sections that were quite entertaining. And thank you for making it interesting to read. And just a final comment, I think that there are very few incentives. That's the way it is. And we can't do anything about protecting any properties unless they're brought to us. So we really appreciate that homeowners like yourself or property owners would turn to the commission to ask for that kind of review, whatever the outcome is, may be.
I can well imagine what would happen 40 or 50 years in the next generation.
Sure.
That'd be a shame. Whatever the outcome is.
Does anyone else have any comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are the proposed guidelines both for HLRB and
Those are the designation agreements.
the administrative guidelines published somewhere? Are they,
Yep, they were on the.
They're on the
they're on the
website.
website?
Yeah.
It's that, okay.
I think on past LHDR hearings, since this is one of our biggest jobs, we've kind of gone around and let everyone comment. So maybe we should just.
Yeah, I think that I agree with the staff report that there are at least 4 criteria met. I was looking to see if there are any others. Can't identify them right now, but I think those are the main ones. And I think certainly I will support historic designation.
I would agree with others. I think this staff report is really thoroughly researched and persuasive.
Yeah, I support everything that's been said. Thank you, Michael, for letting me an opportunity to sort of read about it in advance since I wasn't here when this first came to us. But no, very, very thorough. I think that's a great argument.
Thanks, Andrew and Mark.
I think this is an excellent example of the type of stuff that should be preserved here in Arlington. It's got a long history, and I will vote to approve the district.
Well, thanks staff for their report. I think it's very, very thorough. Lays out the case for clearly, essentially. It's a very, very unique property in Arlington, sort of like the between the actual building and the actual place itself. It really makes it a special place.
The report was very thorough and interesting, so great job, and I appreciate that the owner came and nominated this.
She did so much work, I wasn't gonna come, but with all that work, I got it, so at least I got it.
I echo the comments of others. I think that it's a great place, and I'm glad that it's got an owner that wants to see it preserved. I think unfortunately, other owners would have sold the house and property and would have lost this opportunity. So I heartily endorse it. Thank you.
I also endorse it, and I want to thank the staff for the historic review and the focus on the location of the property. I think one of the valuable things we can do in Arlington is make sure that within each of the sub-regions, so Arlington's a complicated little place with lots of history, within the sub-regions of our community, of our county, it seems to be particularly important to preserve individual properties or neighborhoods that are exemplary of what happened in that place over time. The fact that there was a Civil War fort there, that it was owned as a plantation before that it was connected to early transportation, all of those things give us an opportunity to have a preserved property in a location with a history that the building itself may be like many, many others in the county, which I felt that it was, but its location gives it special priority for me. And by putting that in the report, I was able to understand why preserving this particular property would be valuable to the county and to our future study of history in the county. So thanks for doing all that background. That went way beyond what I would have normally expected about a contemporary property.
I don't really have much to add. The only thing that I would say is I was enticed by the reference to Crandall Mackey, and it was a very prominent person in Arlington history that he once owned this property, but apparently he was a real estate investor. He wanted to flip it, but I thought the staff did a good job in going down that road to see whether there was any Crandall Mackey story to be told in connection with this property. And I thought that was a sign that you really did go and do all the research. I mean, you have to, like, you didn't find anything about the couple that lived there, but so you have to put limits on your time. You just can't research forever, but I thought that was a sign that the staff really did a good job in searching out everything that within a reasonable amount of time could be found out about the history of this property.
I'm gonna pile on. Great report, Mark.
Thank you.
Pierre, I wish we had more homeowners like you in Arlington, who had the foresight to want to protect their properties. Really thankful that you did this.
It's a pleasure. I'm just thinking that perhaps there might be a way to encourage the board. It's not just financial, but it goes through that.
Yeah, we've had discussions about that and, it's hard.
It is.
It's a hard thing.
My heirs on another property I'm thinking of putting in, which has a larger acreage. We're very much in favor, mostly. There has to be a way to deal with that. By the way, just a small suggestion. Perhaps some sort of a small plaque on the street or something would give it the visibility and maybe encourage other people to think along those lines.
I don't know that there's much else to add. I support it hardly.
Okay.
Yes,
So
I
that-
will
yeah.
echo what everyone else has said. Great report, and thank you for posting that.
Not much else to say other than great report. Thank you, Pierre. And then definitely an interesting conversation for the future in terms of how to create more incentives, visibility, and how to make more Pierres to bring this great. Very nice.
Yeah, I agree. And, yes, thank you for bringing this forward. And if you want to bring more forward, that sounds great as well. So no one has anything else. Just go. I move that the HLRB pursuant to its authority under ACZO section 11.3.4.A.2 finds that the property known as Happy Nest located at 4120 41st Street North meets subsections B, E, G, and K of the 11 designation criteria enumerated in CZO section 11.3.4.A.6 as necessary to receive a local historic district recommendation and recommends that the historic district designation be approved. I further move that the HLRB section 11.3.4.A.7 and section 11.3.4.A.8 favorably transmit such recommendation to the county board together with the proposed historic district guidelines for the subject property for the board's further consideration.
I'll second that.
Please respond yes if you support the motion. Nathan Burlingame,
Yes.
Mari Davis,
Yes.
Nan Dreyer,
Yes.
Robert Dutka,
Yes.
Andrew Fakler,
Yes.
Alex Foster, yes. Ray Hamley,
Yes.
Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Rebecca Meyer,
Yes.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Mark Turnbull,
Yes.
Andy Winchell,
Yes.
Dick Woodruff.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Right. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you. I'll be in touch with the other property that's interesting, but be less interested. We talked about it briefly. Thank you all for the work you do. I was on a commission similar, not historical to this, when I was up in Princeton, New Jersey. It's a lot of work. It's not always gratifying, but it is a lot of work. Glad you. Thank you for your time that you put into it.
Thank you.
Appreciate
it. Okay, we're gonna move on to the preliminary hearing for the Haven Apartments at 741 to 821 South Florida Street and 5100 to 527 South. This is the second preliminary.
We'll start with staff's report. On this one, it's a much more brief presentation. As the chair said, this is the second preliminary consideration for this property. Some of you might remember it. It's the Haven Apartments. Okay. So first I wanted to start with a brief reminder of the LHD process that has occurred thus far for this particular application. This nomination was received by staff in April of 2022. And then in July of that same year, the preliminary hearing for the LHD nomination occurred. I should note that the property was nominated not by the property owner, but by a member of the community. And it was not supported by the property owner. The Haven Apartments, which is owned by Insight Group LLC, was part of the Ballston Macy site plan project at that time, so referencing July 2022. Transfer of development rights, or TDRs as we call them, were being used for the Haven apartment site to the Ballston Macy site. And then one of the site plan conditions was for the county to obtain an exterior historic preservation easement for the Haven apartment site as part of that site plan. Given that the easement and the site plan had not yet been finalized in July of 2022, the HALRB decided to defer consideration until the easement had been finalized, which brings us to today. The easement has been finalized. It was finalized in July of this year and recorded. And so the LHD application is returning to you all tonight for its second preliminary hearing. And it's at the preliminary hearing that you all decide whether or not it should be studied.
Is that a perpetual easement?
It's in perpetuity. So this is the proposed district boundary, so it only applied to the parcel itself, which is outlined in red. This is the property in relation to other historic properties in the county. So the property itself is listed on the Historic Resources Inventory, or HRI. It is in the notable category. The Haven Apartments are also listed in the National Register of Historic Places Multiple Property Document Form, or an NPD. That was created for garden apartments in Arlington that were constructed between 1934 and 1954. Located nearby, as you can see on the screen, Columbia Gardens Apartments, Columbia Heights Apartments, the Greenbrier Apartments, Magnolia Gardens, and then Frederick Courts are all also listed on the HRI, whether using either notable or important as their category. The Columbia Pike Shopping Center is also located close by, as are the Park Glen Apartments, both of which are, well, the first is notable, the second is important. The closest NRHP districts are up here. This is Glen Carlin. And then we have two down here, Columbia Forest and then Virginia Heights. And then the closest LHD is the Barcroft Community House, which is located right here. And then the property is located within the Arlington Mill Civic Association, and the stars where it's located. Okay. So according to the LHD nomination form that was submitted, the garden style apartment complex includes 6 sets of buildings, each of which has 3 interconnected individual buildings. The complex was built between 1948 and then 1949. The architect was George E. Sullivan. The builder was Jonathan Woodner Company, and then the developer was Columbia Heights Section 4 Incorporated. The Haven Apartments was originally called Tyrol Hills Apartments, and they were part of the Columbia Heights development, which also included the Monterey Apartments, which were across the street. They're still there today. It was also a Federal Housing Authority, or FHA, property project as well. In terms of architectural features, the Haven Apartments have a mixture of 2- and 3-story buildings in the colonial revival style. The properties have brick exteriors and are U-shaped in their form. The application form noted the following as contributing to the building's historic significance. The property was constructed as part of the efforts in the U.S. and specifically in the suburban areas around Washington, D.C., that to respond to the high demand for low-cost housing. According to the nominator, the Haven Apartments meets 5 of the 11 designation criteria. Specifically, they felt the site met criteria A, B, E, G, and K, but didn't list specific reasons for each of those as to why they applied. So these are the photographs that were submitted as part of the application. You can see the some of the colonial revival detailing, the scale and kind of layout. Here's, one of the pediments here for the colonial revival style. You can see the fenestration patterns. And then this is a map that was also submitted as part of the application, which shows the surrounding complexes and apartments and condos nearby. So the HALRB's task for the evening for this preliminary hearing is to review the nomination form as submitted, to determine if the property may potentially meet 2 of the 11 designation criteria as outlined in the county zoning ordinance, and then to determine if the proposed nomination should continue through the designation process. On the screen, I've also included a snapshot of the LHD process flow chart that we use. It shows where in the process we are currently for this nomination. So if the HALRB finds that they would like to request staff to study this property further, it will be added to our study queue. If you all do not find that it should, that it doesn't warrant further study, then the LHD process would end tonight. And then just as a general reminder, because we had this question in the past, finding that a property may potentially meet 2 of the 11 designation criteria does not mean that you must determine that it should be studied. So you can find that it potentially meets criteria, but still decide that it doesn't need to be studied if there's a reason for that. So as a reminder, these are the 11 criteria as outlined in the zoning ordinance. Again, you all should determine if it potentially meets 2 of the 11. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, and I believe Andrew Painter is here representing the property owner.
Hi, my name is Andrew Painter. I'm a zoning attorney at the law firm of Walsh Colucci, just right downstairs in this building. I'm joined by Sarah Davidson from Inside Property Group. Some of you all were on the board a few years ago when this was first considered, so it's good to see you all again. Just a matter of personal privilege before I get into this, totally way off topic, but Crandall Mackey, if any of you all don't know who he was a reform-oriented Commonwealth's attorney that was trying to break the back of the political machine that ruled Arlington County. And one night he went over across the Long Bridge, deputized a bunch of people, marched back over and destroyed what he could in Jackson City, St. Asaph, the horse track, and worked his way up to Roslyn to do the exact same thing. So really a remarkable person. Okay, that's it.
Whether it was all legal.
Whether it was all legal, yeah. So I just have a couple, I want to provide just a little bit more background. Staff did a really good job on this. I think fundamentally, we don't see the need to impose a local historic district on the site, just given that there is already a mechanism to protect the site through a protective, perpetual historic preservation easement. It's not only duplicative of what a local historic district would have, but actually goes a little bit further. It provides greater permanent protection, whereas the local historic district probably doesn't as much. Staff did a good job of providing the background information about the property. And then Insight purchased this property back in 2017, and it immediately set about doing a series of property improvement, throughout the site. And in 2022, as staff mentioned, we received 4.1 site plan approval to redevelop the Ballston Masons. And as a part of that, concurrent with that application, we filed a series of applications related to the Haven site. And those applications included a commitment to place the historic preservation easement on this property and also place an affordable housing covenant on this property. So to protect these, what are market rate units in perpetuity, or at least for a period of 30 years. So I want to walk through what we did on that just real quick. One was what's called a Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code Amendment. And what that did was it amended a map called the Western Sub-Area Regulating Plan to designate the Haven property as a conservation area. And that then made it eligible for a transfer of development rights and certifying the site as a sending site. The second thing we did was do a form-based code use permit. And what that required was the historic preservation and the affordable housing covenant. The third thing was a certification of transfer of development rights that the county board approved that designated the Haven Apartments as a sending site eligible to transfer density elsewhere, either in Columbia, the Columbia Pike corridor, or outside of the Columbia Pike corridor. And the last thing was a transfer of development rights, certify the Macy's site as a receiving site. So in exchange for placing the historic preservation covenant and the affordable housing covenant on the property, the county board determined that a certain amount of units could be transferred from the Haven site up to the Ballston Macy's site to generate the density for that redevelopment in exchange for preserving this, again, in perpetuity. So the building, if you've driven around Ballston, it's under construction. The terms of the easement it's pretty standard. One, it preserves all of the exterior elevations, the landscape open spaces, the courtyards, the internal circulation networks like the sidewalks and the parking and things like that. It requires Insight to maintain the property. It prohibits outright demolition. And then it says that any replacements must be identical to what's out there now and approved by the county manager with HALRB review. So that's what the easement does. Part of the story here too is about sustainability. I mentioned that Insight commenced a property improvement program when it bought the property in 2017. The commitments that are in the form-based code approvals require a series of short-term, mid-term, and long-term improvements amounting to somewhere around $2.8 million or so to be completed by December of 2028. So that includes things like reappointing the brick, cleaning the window sills, working to improve the entire building envelope from an energy efficiency perspective, LED lighting, and more. We have worked with county and historic preservation program staff. They conduct regular inspections. We have a good line of communication that is expected to continue. And then the last thing is we are installing a pathway that goes from 7th Street down to the parking lot. That'll be placed under a public access easement to allow people to cut through the block across our property. So I guess, just to conclude again, I don't think that there's a need to further consider the local historic district. We do view the board's approval of the 4.1 and the various transfers of development rights as an affirmative public policy statement that that approach was the appropriate way to preserve these buildings in what's on the property. Sarah, I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to add to all of that. That's our position from a property ownership perspective. So thank you very much.
Yep. Okay. I believe Dr. Bernie Byrne is online, nominated being LHD. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I nominated the Haven Apartments for designation as a local historic district. The property owner has indeed, as he stated, received a preservation easement for Haven. While such an easement provides a greater assurance of long-term preservation than the local historic district designation, this local historic designation will provide other benefits, which it's kind of strange. I didn't expect the owner to really oppose this, but anyway. Unlike preservation or easements, local historic district designations require county board approval. Any such approval will generate more public attention and interest in the historic significance of Haven than did the granting of the easement. I doubt that anyone except for you knows there's an easement on this. Maybe a few other people, and of course the owner. Historic preservation staff and HLRB can use the information that the owner provided for the easement when developing their recommendations for the historic district designation. The designation process will therefore not greatly increase staff's and HLRB's workload. That, of course, is up to staff to decide. Here's the important thing. The Monterey Garden Apartment Complex is on the opposite side of South Florida Street from the Haven, as you saw. Monterey Apartments, which was originally named Columbia Heights Section 3, closely resembles Columbia Heights Section 4. Monterey had the same architect and was constructed by the same building during the same time period, 1949 to 1950, as was Haven. 5 of Monterey's 7 original sets of units are still in place. I originally said that all were, but 2 are gone. So 5 of the 7 are still there. If the county designates Haven as a local historic district, it can later expand the district to include Monterey. This would permit the district to encompass the entire Columbia Heights area, historic Columbia Heights area. Most importantly, it would be difficult for the owner of Monterey, which is Paradigm Companies, to successfully challenge a nomination of this property for a local historic district designation. I will make this nomination if you designate the property as a local historic district. Please, therefore, take measures that will provide for the future consideration of local historic designation for the Haven. There's really no downside to this except a small amount of staff work. The county board would undoubtedly approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Byrne. Okay, and Linda LeDuc is here to speak on behalf of the Arlington Mills Civic Association.
Yes, thank you very much. I spoke before this group on July 2022. At that time, I opposed the designation of a historical local district. Part of the reason is I understand that the property is described as Southern colonial style. Apart from that, I don't really understand what is historical about this property. Nobody famous lived there, spoke there, said anything or did anything there. So I'm not sure why it's being designated as historical. Also, to have somebody who does not live in our neighborhood to come in and want to designate a huge amount of property as historical, I sort of object to that. Part of my objection also related to the fact that because property is so difficult to come by in Arlington, I could see that there would be an opportunity to redevelop this property into a mixed income property, which would include affordable housing and possibly even home ownership. The fact that the county gave Insight transfer development rights by designating Haven as 30-year affordable housing would mean that by the end of that period, the Haven apartments would be 100 years old. So again, I just saw that this could possibly be an opportunity to bring some new housing into the Arlington Mill neighborhood. We have a lot of old apartments and we would like the opportunity to upgrade a bit. So thank you very much.
No other public speakers that have signed up? Okay.
Could I ask if she was speaking on behalf of the association?
He was speaking on behalf of the Arlington Mill Civic Association.
Okay.
The information we have, correct? Yes. Okay, the matter is before the board for discussion.
What's the difference between the easement, the historic easement, sorry,
Yeah,
on the property in a historic district?
please give us a little
Yeah,
background on that. Charlotte, both questions.
let me just, I'm trying to share my screen again. I wanted to be able to see the speakers, so. Just make it a bit more visually interesting. So we don't have any slides that necessarily speak to that, but I'm happy to elaborate on that and Lauren can add anything too. Basically the main difference between, well, let me just start here. An easement is attached to the deed of a property and it protects something in perpetuity. So there are special conditions like listed with an easement that talk about preservation treatments, how the property should be protected. Very similar to how we outline treatments for properties that are local historic districts in the design guidelines. The difference is that the local historic district is a zoning overlay. And really the main essential difference between the two is that an easement prevents demolition. You don't get that same level of protection with a local historic district. Demolition is reviewed by the HALRB, but it doesn't explicitly prohibit demolition from occurring. And there is a mechanism in our zoning ordinance that would allow a property owner of a local historic district to seek demolition for a property. Do you want to add anything to that more? Okay.
So the easement is essentially more restrictive than the local historic.
Yes.
In perpetuity.
Yeah.
A question about about the difference. So the exteriors are to be preserved. So who has the authority? Does the HLRB make those calls? Like if something like, like we reviewed, like somebody wants to alter one of the porticos or they want to change the windows, who has the authority to approve those changes?
So there are similar with LHDs, they're kind of two buckets, I would say. For some of the more like smaller kind of everyday maintenance things, those are reviewed by staff. And then for some of the more major changes that are being proposed, that is reviewed by you all for this case.
Okay.
I do want to note though, Mr. Painter just brought this up. It is set up a little differently in that HLRB reviews and the county manager is the final decision maker.
Oh, that's what I was getting at. So we're not the final authority.
I'll even add a little another layer to that.
Could you, I didn't hear.
So what it is, so there's, as Michael was saying, two buckets, kind of administrative or staff. But when we say staff approve, we review it, we make a recommendation to the county manager determines approval or not. Typically, when there's maybe a change that's happening, that's kind of small, we tend to not, we aren't going to recommend it to the county manager unless, let's say it's very insistent that it needs to go to the county manager, but that's one element. And then if it's a bigger thing, let's say it's an addition or demolition, which I have a lot of questions on that anyways, but you all would review it. You would make a recommendation to the county manager and the county manager is the one who makes that decision.
That's all very spelled out, many different scenarios in the easement document, similar to design guidelines like a local historic district.
I have a question about other properties that were used for TDR exchanges, particularly I believe along Wilson Boulevard in Clarendon for the building at. Has anything come up there with exterior changes to any of those buildings?
To some of those, there have been more smaller things. I think the Highland property is the one that maybe had the biggest review by the HLRB because we had to kind of come up with the wall on the side of.
Right, I'm talking about the properties that were the sending sites for the TDRs to that property. Which I believe were along Wilson.
Yeah.
Residential.
Changes have mainly been because most of those are all have like a restaurant or commercial business in it. There always are changes to signage or lighting, canopy. And we've seen things where maybe windows have needed to kind of be replaced. But all of those types of examples are things in those easements, which are different. As we get better with these easements, we've made those details, like it becomes more complicated, but that's better because then we are trying our best to see where we can kind of help at least administratively without having to come to the HLRB. And then, but for big things, it should go to the HLRB and then of course always to county manager too.
There was I think it was the Key Boulevard apartments that the TDR, I forget where the TDRs went, but I don't even think that there was an easement on that one. And a developer came in, wanted to redevelop, and it was rejected because, I forget if it must have been the county manager. So even without the easement, as long as the TDRs are documented correctly, it prevents development. I mean, this property, there's already 2 levels of historic protection, but even if there were only 1 level, some people might say that's sufficient. Here we're suggesting we add a 3rd level of historic protection. Yeah, I mean,
which overlaps.
But yeah.
Which overlaps, right? They all overlap.
Probably just
They all
prevent
overlap.
density. I don't know if they would have prevented,
Yeah.
I haven't read the statute, but I don't know. If the TDR really is a historic overlay, not allowing that density on that site.
Right.
A little different.
Is there anything about the creation of an historic district that is more protective than what already exists with the easement?
There's nothing with how our local historic district ordinance provides more than our easement.
You could argue that it requires HALRB approval. And this one only requires county board approval. So you could say that that's HALRB approval.
County
manager.
If it's a local historic district.
You mean if any changes?
Yes,
Yeah,
you could make that argument.
The county manager decided that,
Right.
that they were okay with the changes, even if we recommended against it.
Yes,
That's the difference between the 2 levels of protection.
right.
There could always be that chance, but we also know that there is an appeal process to the HLRB or an LHD. If the property owner wants to appeal it, they can go that way, and the county board could also decide if they wanted to overturn it. So there's always a way that, hey, guess what? Everybody's decision can possibly get overturned in some way. But yes,
But is that true for a perpetual easement?
I have not, I'll just say this, I have not seen the county manager not agree with this body on recommendations to or denial or whatever of work being done on it. That has not happened. I think again, county manager is dependent on you as the experts to make the sound recommendation. And that's, I think he's.
When we had this in the past, it's either an either or of an easement or an LHD. We've never had a both and that I can recall.
We have one,
What was that?
meaning we have one property that right has now. that has a county held easement as well as a local historic district, but there's only the one.
It's unusual.
It is unusual. It's very rare.
Is there an actual requirement that the manager seek our advice, or is this just a standard county practice?
It is after board review. So we get to review it no matter what, then the county manager can decide.
But again, that's for specific things and that typically are larger things.
smaller things, it is different where staff makes a recommendation.
But it's in like county ordinance.
For easement, it's in the easement document. It looks like a contract and that's added to the deed. So it's not just for venture group having to, anybody else who owns that property has to also.
Because it has some historic rationale for the easement, is that the reason?
So the easement is recorded into the deed. So whoever owns the property and owns that deed, they have to follow these.
Okay, I'm just, I don't know whether this is relevant or not, but I know that the county board has vacated public easements before without consulting any other bodies in the past. Like, for instance, what's it called? The View in Roslyn. I mean, what would require the county manager or the county board to seek our input for any changes that they care to make? I don't know. Is there a statute or?
You're asking some really great questions. We have never had this tested. That is a scenario that I've asked a lot about. Would, let's say, a future county board want to overturn a perpetual easement? And there, it's not a process where they would have to get your input. But I think maybe I'm naive. I have faith that they would want to have your input. I'm just gonna go on with it, partly because you're talking about something that it would be that's a very political choice to make. And I think the county board looks at it as there was an argument, there was a reason, there was a reason why the county board at that time made that decision. And they may try their best to understand what that was, but to try and trust what that county board was and not to overturn. Now, there can always be a chance that it can happen, but I also think that there can always be a chance that county board wanted to politically and have that will. They could do the same thing with the local historic district. There's always something that there can always be a chance that something could be overturned. But as we know, that is a public process. There's no secret way to do that. It would be very, and then again, if they tried to, then it would be a violation of the site plan. I'm looking at you, Andrew. You're the expert in this. And it would then be against the site plan conditions, and therefore the TDRs wouldn't happen. And then that would be a whole basket case of chaos.
Yeah, I wrote down a couple of things. One, the county board holds the cards in all of this, and they can vacate the easement because they will direct the manager to vacate the easement, just like they could vacate a local historic district at the end of the day. They are the ones that do it. Now, I will say the easement is between the parties, between the county and between the ownership. That easement cannot be amended without the consent of both parties. I will also say too, building on that, Mr. Laporte talked about a couple different layers. It is true. The historic preservation needs to be held in order for the certification of the transfer of density. The Boston Macy's site would be technically in violation. There'd be a zoning violation if the transfer of density from the form-based code use permit was then in violation as well. So it's multiple different layers. So there's a series of legislative approvals as well as private restrictive covenants that are recorded in the land records of the county that are adding these layers that all would have to be undone. And I don't see that as a very,
Lots of work for you.
it'd be great from a building.
But I think
Can I ask a question? So what is the nature of your objection to the historic district?
Well, I think number one, it's just redundant. It's an additional layer that we have to go through. You might want to speak to this too, but you all just refinanced as well, conveyed it to another related, special purpose entity. And it's just another bureaucratic layer that's on top of what we've already committed to.
But if you wanted to make changes to the apartments now, just with the easement, would it come before the board here?
There are certain things spelled out in the easement, building alterations, other types of major alterations. I think there's 5 categories of things that do come before the board. The county manager has to refer it to you.
Okay, is that fairly similar to the sorts of things that we review on historic districts?
So, or like design guidelines.
Yeah, I've got the list here, which I can read. For example, I don't need to read all of them, but enlargement or addition of exterior of any structure, including the buildings on the property, removal or demolition of any exterior part of the structure, construction of a new structure, changes to the grounds, including circulation pattern, the sidewalks reconfigurations. These are things that will come before the HALRB.
Does sort of sound redundant.
I would just like to address two things we heard in some of the public testimony, one of which is a follow-up question for staff. One, I don't love the prospect of being asked to approve a historic district. It sounds like it's going to make another property across the street vulnerable to this in the future, which is kind of what something sounded like. And secondly, the other speaker said 30 years when the affordable housing easement is up, they would like to potentially see it redeveloped for new housing. Aren't those totally separate matters? That's what I wanted.
Yes, yes.
They're totally.
They are separated. It is, the affordable housing, covenants will expire, but the easement will not. Easement stays, and it stays forever.
And you guys have like at least 3 LHD researches ahead of you still, is that correct?
No. We have, now that happiness moved along, we are now we have started the Melwood study. Once that's done, we can then start to be more reactive if there's anything else that comes. Let's say there's another property that community is interested in, wants to support LHD study, or again, if there's maybe a certain threat to a historic property, then we would be able to react to that right at that time. And that's something I think everybody should consider, because it has been a long time since we have ever been that caught up. And we anticipate we'll be coming to the HLRB in February 2026 with that study. So that will be moving along. After that, I don't know. Maybe we can be proactive.
Maybe you can listen up in the environment. Submitting a historic designation request in that case.
I love that we've actually used an incentive, which is TDR, to get an historic preservation easement on a property. So, but I do want to respect that for some reason that's kind of the route we went to do this. It will be useful at a later time, maybe know why that's picked instead of the LHD. But I do also not want to overly burden a property owner that has kind of proactively done a good historic preservation project. But I do agree that, I think a local historic district does give the property a little bit more publicity, and like it's more of an honorary thing. And I think not many people probably know about the historic preservation easement, but most people find out about the LHD. So I think that's something to consider. But I think comes down to me that I think it might be a little confusing to have two. I think we could, if we did the LHD, try to make the requirements exactly the same, so that, something's not violating the preservation easement, but then works under the LHD or vice versa. I think that would be, if we did do the LHD, we'd have to have the criteria be the exact same. I think we could get in some sticky situations. So I think that, that could be a little confusing if we like what this says and prevents demolition, then I think that the protection might already be there. So just some food for thought for everyone.
Just to follow up on that, you're right that it does, making it a local historic district would give it some public prominence. Like, for instance, we have a list on our website of all the local historic districts. I don't think we have a list of all the properties on which we hold historic preservation easements. And I'm wondering if that could be a possibility, because, that's part of our job.
We do have a website. It needs some work. So it's noted.
There is a page that does have the easements on there. It's also, we have the easement identified in the historic plan. Now, there can be improvements to that. And we even are trying better to highlight our local historic districts. And so I think that there's wanting to try and do that. There is nothing holding us back from improving our outreach on that. And just because we may not have all of the information about that property doesn't mean that we can't
also do that too. We can do that level of research and understand it without having to do a whole local historic district study.
I'm just saying that's, something that maybe.
No, I think it's a great point. Yes.
Just to follow up on that, because in many jurisdictions, when you have easements, there are plaques people put on the building. Is that, and I know we talked about this at HLRB, Terry, I think way back, and I don't think it ever went anywhere. Because that's another thing, because that's, as you walk by and you see a plaque and you say, oh, there's an easement on this. That's much better in my view than on a website that somebody may or may not look at. So I don't know, that's something else we could talk about at some point.
I love that you brought that up. That's one of the things that we have as a recommendation that we should consider in our program is improving something like having house plaques or any type of thing that a property owner can do. That's something that they can be proud of and support and show. And that's something that we have that we want to include. So, yeah.
And did you have a note on that?
Yes, thank you very much. Just real quick, I was showing Davidson this before. When my wife and I converted our 1.5 story Cape Cod to a 2-story Federalist structure, we gave it a name and we put up our own plaque. If you guys have been to Clifton, Virginia, we got in touch. They've got plaques in all the houses.
Yeah.
And we have gone around to our neighbors and we've encouraged them to do the exact same thing, telling the story, tracing back the history about who lived there. She was saying to me too, exactly where you were going, which is there is a way to tell the story. We are proud of this. This is a very good historic preservation. It fires on all cylinders from multiple things from a county policy perspective. We'd be happy to explore doing plaque, working with historic preservation staff, maybe even return to you all so you can see what we would put on there, but also being able to promote it on our own Insight Property Group website too, that people know that they're living in a site. So without having the burden of an additional sort of redundant local historic district, I think there's a good way to tell that story for everybody that lives in the Arlington neighborhood.
That, I mean, no.
Doesn't that fall under landmark review?
Oh, with the money. A good question.
Speaking, we were talking about incentives for people proposing their single family homes and such for historic district. I mean, that's a minor one, but the county putting up a plaque or something at their property is sort of a way to show off what they've done and the history of that property.
Might be cheaper than an historic marker.
Does staff have a position on this? Recommendation?
We can't provide a recommendation on it because it's a preliminary, so we really just have to go off of what is submitted in the LHD application.
And do we have to determine whether or not it meets some provisions?
That would be our recommendation, is to just have a discussion as to whether or not it could potentially need to. But like I said earlier, even if you find that it could potentially need to, you could still decide that that doesn't mean you have to make it go this.
And what did the nominator, what were they suggesting?
They suggested A,
B, E, G, and K.
Yes, thank you, Joan. A, B, E, G, and K.
Okay.
Does anybody want me to read this out? Just in case. So A, the property is listed or is eligible for inclusion in the National Register of Historic Places. B, the property has character, interest, or value as part of the development, heritage, and cultural characteristics of the county, state, or nation. E, the property embodies distinguishing characteristics of an architectural style valuable for the study of a period, type, or method of construction. G, the property embodies elements of design, detailing, materials, or craftsmanship that render it structurally or architecturally significant. And then K, the property is suitable for preservation or restoration.
Is it eligible for inclusion in the National Register?
It's already on it.
It's already on.
Oh, because it's
in an
a contributing structure. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
So that seems like there's an obvious too, if it already meets A and then it clearly meets K, because that's the whole process that is
been mandated for it. So
I have a technical question about that. Is A referring to the property itself being included or as a contributing structure to a district? Is there a difference?
Yeah, we've used it as both in the past.
But it seems that we could both agree that 2 or more criteria are met and decide that the preservation easement suitably protects the property without also requiring additional study for a confusingly overlapping additional status.
Yes,
I'm not sure we would have to go quite that far. We could just, I mean, this is something that I think it was a little bit farther on in the process, but we found that a property met several criteria. And then we declined to move it forward to the county board.
Right.
But we didn't necessarily give reasons for it.
I would recommend that just for the record keeping aspect of it, that a reason for why.
Yeah.
Even if you think it meets certain criteria, that the reason is stated for why you don't believe it should move forward for study is stated in the motion.
We decided that it should not be put forward for a study. Is that something that can be revisited later if something changes?
It would end the LHD process, and to reconsider it in the future, the nominator, somebody would have to resubmit the LHD application.
So it doesn't preclude a subsequent renomination.
It doesn't, but I think staff would want to see more information presented to justify why it was coming forward again.
I have a question about the presentation. This property is already included in the general National Register of Historic Places nomination or that we did several years ago, right? This one is included.
It's in the garden apartments.
So also what we're doing is we're saying that although it was included in the general garden apartments National Register nomination, this individual property also could be taken out and listed on its own. That's what we'd be saying if we vote for A, right?
You can look at it either way, honestly. It's not just individual, like, it can be either or.
Right. So for example, if you've got a
No, I'm talking about the property is eligible for inclusion. Since we know it's already included in the general nomination, all we're saying is, well, we're going from the general to the specific, and we think that this property, among all the garden apartments that are already listed, is eligible for listing on its own.
you could look at it that way, or you could say that it is already listed because it's already part of that nomination.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
This begs the question of why this particular property among the dozens that are listed within garden protected, garden apartments protected under this category. Why is this one singled out as the one that needs a particular study and designation? It's protected by easement. It's within already a designation of historic
Well,
property.
that's only honorific though.
I understand, but nothing's been presented so far in the preliminaries that suggests something important happened there, somebody lived there, something made it distinctly more important than the apartment buildings across from it or around it or in the neighborhood. So, I mean, that would be something staff would have to look at. So I think our question is, do we feel enough has been presented in the preliminaries that it warrants this further study to determine whether this is a very special set of buildings as compared to the others that are very similar, same time, same design, et cetera, that are in the same area. And this one in particular happens to already be protected by the easement, whereas one that may have been the residence of, a great civil rights leader is not even being considered. I don't know, but to me, that's the essence of the question. Why this property in the preliminaries that have been presented?
Point taken. Does anyone have a strong feeling that they would like to study it, move forward in the LHG process? I haven't heard that. Just want to make sure if
Just
you
wanna make-
do.
Quick note though, I'm sort of abstaining from the discussion because I'm actually the president of the Arlington City. I'm just sort of bling a little bit.
And I'm
But
sorry, Omari,
but
I was supposed to,
I did have
I
one.
was supposed to note that. My God.
I do point one technical question or note. The image that you showing, I guess, garden apartments in our neighborhood, I think there's actually one on there that actually does no longer exist. I think you go back to like your first slide with the squares.
This one?
Yes, actually, this one's actually been torn down. This is a note, just to.
Okay, thank you, Omari. We need to ask GIS.
Thank you, Omari. Sorry, I was supposed to let him know that a long time ago. Okay, so I think if no one's gonna jump out of their seat and have another strong opinion, I am gonna put a motion forward. And it's gonna be along the lines of that we think it probably could meet criteria, but we don't think it's necessary to continue with the study. Okay, so here's the motion. Whereas the HLRB has received an application submitted pursuant to ACZO section 11.3.4A.1 for historic district designation of the property known as the Haven Apartments located at 74128 South Florida Street and 5100 to 5112 7th Road South. Whereas the HLRB has reason to believe the property could meet at least 2 of the 11 qualifying criteria enumerated in ACZO section 11.3.4.A.6. However, the HLRB pursuant to its authority under ACZO section 11.3.4.2 does not request county staff to undertake further study of the property known as the Haven Apartments located at 741-821 South Florida Street and 5100 to 5112 7th Road South, because the property is already protected by an historic preservation easement.
Can we say that it's a perpetual?
You want to change it to the property? Yes, the property. So the last line after because, let's change that to the property is already protected by a perpetual historic preservation easement.
I'd second that.
Could you also add something about at this time or on the basis of the information at hand? Because that's what we've said. At the
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines at this time.
The second.
So at this time, for which part? Like, what do you mean?
You could just say based on the information we've received.
Right. Based on the information.
Okay, so it's the property is
And it-
protected by the perpetual historic preservation easement based on information we received.
I would say and.
Well, I guess I was thinking that based on the information we've received, we think the
Correct.
historic preservation easement is sufficient.
Right.
So, yeah.
And somebody could come up with, somebody famous lived here
Yeah.
and we would change our mind.
That's right.
Okay, how about, so
Exactly right.
after because, let's change it to because, comma, based on the information we've received, comma, the property is already protected by a perpetual historic preservation easement.
I feel like I need someone to second that.
Always.
All right, so Nan is, sorry, Mark, Nan.
Mark can second if you want.
I still like that.
So please respond yes if you support the motion. Please respond nay if you do not support the motion. Nathan Burlingame,
Yes.
Mari Davis,
Abstain.
Nan Dreyer,
Yes.
Robert Duncan,
Yes.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster. Yes. Ray Henley,
Yes.
Jerry Laporte,
Thanks.
Joan Lawrence. Yes. Rebecca Meyer,
Yes.
Katie Meyer,
Yes.
Mark Turnbull,
Yes.
Andy Winchell,
Yes.
and Dick Woodruff.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone, for your time coming to the
Thank
hearing.
you very much.
And at this time, public testimony has concluded and you will comment said tonight. I have nothing for the chair's report, but I did want to maybe say like so much. Might be a good opportunity to kind of discuss, kind of things like people are interested in incentives, trees and historic districts and things like that. So, if you want to maybe discuss one of those issues, I think, I can add one in a chair's report. Especially like if we have maybe an hour-long meeting, we want to add kind of a discussion item to the chair's report. I never want to add too much because everyone's. But maybe a shorter meeting, we could have a couple like discussion items that people are interested in.
It's a great idea. I didn't know when to propose an additional item for an agenda, but I guess that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it during the chair's report, if you want to propose an additional item to the agenda, I can do that. We did that with the public speakers at the last meeting. Or we can just do it at the very end of the meeting.
So I would say at any point in the month you want to talk about something and it's before the meeting, you can just email Katie or you can email me and just say.
Sounded like Katie was saying right now, let's talk about anything you want to talk about.
Well, I think so I could do that. Yes. In the chair's report, I could bring up a topic and we could all discuss it. I think I'd rather like do, beforehand, find out. And then if it was a shorter meeting, maybe have more discussion items, just because I feel like after a long meeting, some people maybe don't want to do a discussion. So I don't want to keep people here to discuss it.
I don't think this has ever come up, but I wonder if the board has ever had sort of a workshop on a particular, a separate, it would be in public, there'd be minutes, all of that. But could there be, for those members of the board that wanted to, were able to, for example, a discussion of the topic that we've circulated around 3 times already tonight, which is something like a discussion of how we might encourage our fellow county community members to make use of the historic preservation tools that are available to them. Because a lot of people don't know easements, local historic districts, community this is just an unknown to, I'd say, 90% of the people who live in the county, would be my guess. How could we encourage more historic preservation? Either by owners coming forward with their individual properties, by communities considering whether or not they like what's happened to Maywood, by just letting people know, by recognizing people who've done it or haven't done it, through plaques, through an annual award to someone who's taken a great incentive. I mean, that it seems to me that would be, now that staff is not about to have a heart attack from overwork, we might think about how to really be more proactive, as the public speaker said, how to be more proactive about explaining to people what it means to preserve, why it's important, etc. I mean, I would say that could be an agenda item where we would just toss out ideas, or it could be kind of a separate, 2-hour workshop where we really brainstorm about how this might occur and how we might be able to do it with the resources that we have.
I'd just like to say that I think the staff has done an amazing job. There is a quarterly email that goes out, report, maybe at least maybe more often maybe. And then there's been Historic Preservation Month. There were design awards at one point. So a lot of that has been done.
I'm not criticizing in any way.
I know,
or saying that it hasn't been done. But we hear from public all the time that they didn't know how that worked or how to do it. I mean, so one easy thing would be to go to each of the community associations in the county, and maybe this has been done. Where
I did when I was chair, I did that.
Right.
Well, I think that it goes without saying that if anybody has a topic that they would like brought up at a meeting for there to be a wider discussion, you can absolutely share that with us, or you can share it with me, and we'll kind of determine based off the length of the agenda where it could go. Because I think those are good opportunities.
Yeah. So yeah, let's email about it, throw out some topics. I love talking about this stuff, so I can talk about it probably I don't want to deter people from bringing things up. But I also just want to keep the meeting, keep people. Plans.
I like your idea. I mean, I think it's great. You know, we should be in touch if we want to talk about stuff and set it up.
Yeah, and I do think with like a Saturday thing or like a workshop, I think we wouldn't get as much participation as if we just all said, you know, after a short meeting, half hour, we're gonna sit. So yeah, that's my chair's report then. And staff report. We do have a staff report.
Yes. All right. Has anybody been paying attention to their emails from Mike? I noticed anything.
I hope so.
Oh.
All
All right.
Well, yes, not that.
So that's meeting, but I just want to announce that Michael is now our principal planner with the Historic Preservation Program. She accepted the position. That, so.
That's very kind.
So we're very thrilled to have her in this role. That does mean that we have a vacancy right now with our program with the associate planner position that is already up and announced, and tomorrow the announcement closes. We're hoping to move very quickly to see if we're going to be able to fill that position. Of course, there's always a question if positions can be filled or not, all depending on the budget year. So we will have to see how that goes. But we're trying to see if we can get that filled quickly. But please be patient with us. You're still just a team of 3 doing 4 people's jobs. And Michael is going to be kind of wearing 2 hats for a little while. And so we appreciate everybody's patience as we continue to transition into everyone's roles. So I also just want to kind of go into, I know some members maybe weren't all here last week, but I just want to kind of refresh, remind everybody that the Historic Preservation Program's local historic district study queue is now been changed, updated. As we discussed in last month's meeting, the HPP is now going to use the date of the HALRB's motion requesting staff to study a local historic district as the basis for the study order. This went into effect on September 29th. We shared those details about this update in our internal policy with you all in the email on September 4th, and we discussed it during this meeting. And we provided a summary of how that went on September 23rd and asked for any final feedback by September 26th. We did not receive any. So, staff has made some minor updates to our website to communicate this update to the public. And if anybody has any questions, please let me know and I can try and answer them. John, can you provide an update just on the change in community engagement and?
Oh, sure. So, last month as well, we had mentioned that I would be representing the Historic Preservation Program on the Arlington, Virginia 250th Committee. At that time, I'd also asked if anyone from the HALRB would like to join and represent the HALRB on the Arlington VA 250th Committee. So I want to thank Nan for offering to do that. She will be joining me in that endeavor and can help provide any updates on that come forward. Right now, we don't have any updates. There's not been any committee meetings since then. However, HPP staff are continuing to be in regular communication with Arlington Historical Society leadership to better determine how we can assist them in their Arlington 250th programming.
And just one last thing, I'm just kind of thinking of this now. I'm tracking a lot of site plan projects that are going through. Michael and I are kind of working through those, and there are going to be a couple site plans that aren't going to directly affect, at least what I've seen, any historic properties. But there's a lot of questions the community has about potential archaeology or, how is this design affecting other existing architecture that's around it that's historic. So there's going to be a couple projects that we'll want to reach out to some of you on to see if you can help with being on the SPRC. So please just kind of keep in mind that sometimes, it might not be like big, heavy hitting type projects, but it's always reassuring, I think, to the community when they see an HLRB member in these SPRC meetings, because they know that they have an advocate who is keeping in consideration historic properties, history of the area and the neighborhood. And so, we'll be reaching out to you all soon to see if we can get some of you all to kind of volunteer your time. That concludes the statute.
No, that's all right. All right, we are adjourned. Yeah.
I'm going to put in a plug for my next show.